And so they're going to be focusing on healthcare providers, frontline people, and the people in the some of the stricken zones, like Jubilee Lodge, which has been hit here in town. And, you know, the first vaccine that you get, you have to wait 21 days after that for the second one. So you've got 21 days, probably 28 days before everyone from that first batch is vaccinated the second time. And then we go from there, right? And it's going to take months for everybody who needs to be vaccinated to be vaccinated. So spring is looking like when we're going to see things start to mellow out a little bit here. But we got some tough times ahead until then. I mean, Northern Health has been hit pretty hard in the last couple of weeks. My family is directly impacted with that, as my wife works at Jubilee Lodge, and all the people there are working like crazy to try and keep this contained and try and get it to slow down. But it's a lot of work, and they're having a hard time with the pressure on people and the you know, making sure that the most vulnerable residents are safe. And it's going to be tough. We've got a lot ahead before we see the light fully blooming here. That tunnel's going to take a long time to travel. Yeah.
And Chuck, you were saying earlier that you know, there's a lot of people that, like in the healthcare industry, and your wife is working there, that are really stressed right now, and they've been working a lot of long hours. And
yeah, a lot of long hours. My wife is on overtime today because they just need everybody hands on deck. And you know, there are people. I know a nurse there today is working a 24-hour shift.
Wow.
You know, and there are people doing that day after day, and that's pretty hard on you. And it just increases the stress and the pressure and the possibility of getting ill, not just from COVID, but from other things as well. So it just makes it much, much harder. Those people really deserve our support right now. And we just got to do whatever we can to help them move forward.
Todd, do you think there's we're going to have problems rolling out the vaccine, not necessarily rolling out the vaccine, but in that people will think that things are okay and let their guard down? So there's lots of talk about that.
I mean, that's a challenging question to answer. I think, you know, you're trying to enter into someone's psyche. I think you know, as Chuck points out, the challenge we face right now, and the federal government has said they're aiming, I believe, for June for pretty much everyone who wants to be vaccinated. So, you know, we're into essentially summer at that point. So, you know, I don't want to sound negative in the process, but I read a great article the other day that said, great, vaccines are rolling. We're now at halftime. So we've gone through 9 or 10 months. Now we've got another 9 or 10 months of this rollout and processing to take shape. As Chuck points out, you know, the Pfizer biome is a 2-phase inoculation, so there's that process to work through as well. It looks statistically like majority of people are planning on taking it, which, you know, if you take it, presumably you're safe, so you can protect yourself and you can protect your family in that way. So that's great. We certainly hope everyone makes that decision to keep themselves safe and to keep our economy at a level place. So, you know, people's desire to take it or not take it, or speculate or fearmonger on different issues, that's their prerogative. We live in a free society. You can make those decisions on your own. I'm vaccinating myself. You know, my wife is a teacher. I'm challenged that teachers aren't being vaccinated in the first or early into the second wave. I think that's a short-sighted approach, that it's healthcare workers, LTCs, and homeless people, when teachers are on the front line of this every day as well. And we're seeing school breakouts or spreads on the rise as well. And I think there's some challenges with that.
Mm-hmm. Just a quick note, Tash Williams says hello. So hello, Tash. Thanks for watching. But you talked a little bit about the rollout, Todd. BC's kind of rolling the dice a little bit with the vaccines. My understanding is that we're going to use all the doses we have under the hopes that nothing happens to the supply lines and the secondary doses arrive within the next 3 weeks. So is that a smart plan, or what's your take on it?
Smarter people than any of us or any of us combined have looked at the supply chain and Pfizer BioNTech's production capacity and estimated that this is probably factual. So I don't think we can dispute what that looks like. I think the question has to become, who is within the phases of vaccination and how does that fall? How does that stop any emergent spreads from happening? We've seen, so the vaccine arrived in Vancouver. It's with Fraser Health and the Lower Mainland, the Vancouver Health region, that are getting it first. And meanwhile, Northern Health is starting to see a significant uptick in cases. As Charles mentioned, there's outbreaks in our care homes now. And per capita, we're not in a great place here in Northern Health. And while I understand the struggles of keeping something at -70 through transit, they managed to get it from Belgium to Canada at -70. Why can't we get it from Vancouver to Prince George at -70 and stop what is fast becoming a challenging outbreak in our health region?
Yeah, I saw a story somewhere with one of these dry ice manufacturers and people, and -70 is not out of the norm for them. So it's not like we all think, oh my God, -70, and that must be, you got to build all these things to do it. The materials are there, and we have companies that already deal with this kind of transfer. It's just, I think it's the scale of it that, and getting it where it needs to go is the other challenge.
Well, and communication matters, right? I mean, you can't signal that Vancouver Coastal, that's sort of the health region, and Fraser Health are more important than Interior Health in the Okanagan or Northern Health up here. But it's messaging like that that further creates a rural-urban divide when you say, no, these Lower Mainland health regions are our most important right now. We have to remember where BC's wealth is derived from, and that's the areas outside the Lower Mainland. It may come down there, but if we're not protecting where our economy is starting from, it can't make it to the finish line either.
Yeah,
that's exactly it. Yeah, and that said, there are places here in town that can handle that -70 setup and storage, and everybody's just got to ramp up together right now and make sure that they have everything in place. And it looks like we're set, and they've got a plan, but then there'll be challenges along the way still, but it will come together.
Mm-hmm. What about the plan of who gets it first, and the area about that is they've sort of been doing a mix of healthcare workers and people in long-term care homes, which sounds reasonable, but I don't know. Should we focus more on healthcare workers or on people in long-term care homes? It's got to be a tough decision. I'm kind of glad I'm not at that table, but any thoughts on where that falls out?
That's kind of that's an interesting situation, right? I mean, it's 6 of one, half dozen another some ways. If you do give it to all the long-term care residents, then you're sure that population is okay. But then your healthcare workers that are working with them may still develop the COVID, and is that ideal, right? Or you can go the other way and make sure that all the healthcare workers are safe, but then you've still got to make sure that everyone in the long-term care homes is isolated from everybody else as well. At the same time, you have to make sure that your your healthcare workers aren't relaxing their guard outside of the facilities and bringing it in still. So it's really tough to balance that, I think. And like Todd says, there's much smarter brains than us trying to work that out, and hopefully they've got it all figured out right. It sounds like they're going to try and do a mix and make things work that way, and going with the let's give everybody we can the first dosage and reduce their susceptibility by 50%, and then go from there with with what we can get later on. It sounds like a good plan. It should probably work really well, but time will tell. We don't know. I mean, everybody is doing a lot of best guessing right now, and that's the way we're going to have to play it for a while, I think, and see how it works.
Yeah. And after that, after healthcare workers and or people in long-term care homes and that, so then where do we go? I'm assuming frontline service workers and more hospital workers, and they talk about people with underlying conditions, but what exactly is not an underlying condition, but a condition that puts you at risk? Is that heart disease? Is that diabetes? Is that I'm assuming that's along those lines, and it must be a big challenge for how do you find all those people and how do you prioritize them?
Yeah, that's another thing too. I mean, you'd think it's going to be a lot focusing on people with breathing problems a lot too, because that's where this virus attacks. So people with asthma or COPD and things like that, you'd think that they would be the next ones in line along with other frontline workers, But like I say, it's tough to make sure you prioritize the right people, get the right people to the virus, or the virus to the people, and you've got to do it not just once, but you got to do it twice.
Yeah.
I don't think you're ever going to appease everybody.
No.
Like we've all said, that you don't want to sit around this table because effectively you're somewhat deciding a life and death situation. And certainly frontline healthcare workers, and I would challenge that LTCs are included in frontline health workers, as well as all the support staff that's in these medical facilities, from cafeteria workers to cleaners. They're consistently exposed to the air within these facilities, and I think we need to be mindful of that, because to Chuck's point, and as we've seen, a lot of LTC workers and cafeteria and custodial workers in these facilities, that's one of two, one of three, one of four jobs that they have. So they could be porting it in so many different places. So I think the eye needs to be the facility, not the individual, so that you're focused on a facility in its entirety, or a sector of the facilities. The other piece I would say is I'm challenged that we don't talk about first responders through this process. Police, fire, and paramedics are consistently putting themselves in harm's way, as are teachers. And I think we need to look at this a little bit differently and say, who is at the highest rate or highest risk, of exposing themselves and therefore exposing others? And the vaccine should follow a rollout similar to that. And I get that you're instantly choosing sides, but I see police out day in and day out that are pulling over vehicles, that are dealing with homeless, drug addicted, or mental health challenged people. They're dealing in high stress situations. The paramedics and fire are administering naloxone. They're dealing with people who are passed out. They're dealing with traumatic situations where you couldn't go to a house fire and tell somebody who's just lost their possessions to put on a mask for their safety. That's a challenging discussion. So we need to focus on what's best for their safety and therefore the safety of others that they're interacting with.
Yeah. That makes a lot of
Yeah,
sense.
absolutely, and it's hard to, it's like I say, to create that priority list. I think I'm probably at the bottom of the list, but
You and me both.
but yeah, it certainly is a challenge.
Yeah, I think too you've got to consider also like people like grocery store workers. You know, I mean, they are meeting a significant portion of the population daily, and that puts them at risk, right? So when does it go to that group as well? You know?
We've seen most offices and professional services organizations move to, staggered schedules. I think if you look specifically at the province and the Fed, in their own offices, you're in the office 2 days a week, you're working from home 3 days a week, and there's a schedule that's set up to adapt through that. Retail and restaurant workers don't have that benefit. They're working 6-7 days a week and in multiple locations.
Yeah.
And being more challenged business-wise. Todd, maybe you have an idea of how businesses are doing here in Prince George through this, getting into week or month 9 now, and more lockdowns and all that kind of stuff. So how are businesses faring?
Yeah, it's varying. There's obviously certain sectors, retail and restaurant, that have been hit significantly harder than other sectors like manufacturing or office professional services types of positions. And they're in this untenable position of dealing with evolving and revolving health orders that keep coming out. So, the downside is they're forced into this position of an unknown from day to day, week to week. But with that, what we've seen is, the saying about entrepreneurs is true. They're probably some of the most genius people that you'll ever meet. Their duty to innovate is not lost. And they've continuously looked for different opportunities to market or to advertise or to service the community. And so that's genuinely encouraging because you're seeing people who recognize this is their dream, this is their passion, this is their livelihood. They're finding different ways to engage. So I think we've seen a pretty strategic evolution of our business community here, but there's certainly still going to be challenges, not the least of which is, these COVID recovery grants, or whatever they're calling them from the province, that's focused on your 2019 earnings. Well, I wasn't hit by COVID in 2019. None of us were. It came in 2020. And so we've created this bureaucratic challenge now of dictating who's getting money based on historical information that has no relevancy in the discussion.
Mm-hmm.
And that's money that could have been well spent at local businesses.
Yeah.
Because there's the issue now with the serb, the original payment as well, that Canada Revenue Agency, somewhere in probably 500,000 words of documents, that they said net rather than gross on someone's income, so they're whether they're qualified for the serb, and now they want the money back. And some of those people are like $14,000-15,000 who haven't been able to work, have to rely on the $2,000 a month they've been getting. Where are they going to come up with $14,000-15,000 to pay this back by the end of the year, where you get taxed on it?
Yeah. There's a number of challenges that come with this, and I don't think we can blame government for flowing money out when money needed to flow out. I think they did the right thing at the right time, but we've created now this cluster that CRA is going to be challenged with for the next 20 years to try and manage their way through, to try and recoup funds. And the unfortunate side of that is some people may get left behind or forced into these challenging situations where CRA collects and CRA collects. And that's the unfortunate part of it. So, it's certainly our hope that there'll be some thought given to how they recoup those funds if they weren't taken nefariously. There's certainly situations where we've seen some people have taken advantage of this and gamed the system and taken hundreds of thousands of dollars. Go after them. By all means, go after them and recoup that, because those are valuable tax dollars. But if someone has inadvertently applied for something based on language, or received it, let's be a little bit empathetic to how we recoup that.
Yeah, exactly. Give some time, at least give some time to pay it back without being penalized for it. So, yeah. Yeah, Chuck, your thoughts on some of those?
Well, yeah, there are definitely people that took advantage of it and did it knowingly. And as Todd says, those people, go get them. I mean, come on. If you see a way and you think, haha, I can get this, or I can get 2 times this, or whatever, you deserve what you get. But the people that were honestly applying, thinking they were going ahead with the right way of doing things, they're not in any better situation now than they were when they applied for it. So the government's just going to have to look at them and go, yeah, we know this is going to be tough. We're going to have to take the long road on this and see how we can get it paid back. We're going to want you to pay it back, but we're not going to expect you to pay it back tomorrow. They have to look at it with a little compassion. And I think that's the only way that we can go forward. Otherwise, you will end up with a country with 20% bankruptcies, and that's not going to be good for us in any which way.
No.
So, and there's smart people out there who are working with this, and they know that they have to reach a balance that's going to work and still keep our economy on the go, and without disrupting the way of life of everybody that has to pay this back. So I'm expecting that they're going to be smart about it and not be heavy-handed. But, I've been wrong before.
It is the CRA, so I think heavy-handed isn't that their motto?
Yeah.
Let's be clear. We love CRA. We all love CRA.
Yeah, exactly.
Praise my friend.
Exactly. But speaking of benefits, any thoughts, Todd or Chuck, on the provincial one that's supposed to roll out and comparatively is just a one-time kind of thing. Well, they already had the first one with $1,000, I think it was, and now they're going to have another one, which is could be $500, or depending on your family. Of course, getting money is always good, I guess. But do you think this program is really actually going to help anybody over the long term?
A very, very small segment. Again, it's 2019, so we're a chamber of commerce. We could have been closed down as a result of this. So my salary and my wife's salary from 2019 likely would have excluded us. So what's to say, had I been fired, that I wouldn't be able to access that? It's bureaucratic in nature. So it's been established in such a way that it's going to take this huge bureaucracy to manage it, filter the funds out, make sure that there's nobody nefariously taking advantage of it. And it does open this Friday, and it's an online submission process. And from what I've seen, it's quite involved. So there's people that are reviewing this, as opposed to you could have sent out a one-time check to everyone who's registered in BC as a tax-paying resident of BC, and clawed it back if you needed to at tax time, whether it was $500 or $1,000 or whatever it is. Situations change, and I can only use our situation. So my wife is on mat leave. We have a newborn. None of these things were applicable in 2019. But as a result of that, our costs have gone up exponentially. And our revenues as a result of her being on mat leave have gone down significantly. And none of that is a result of the pandemic, but those are all 2020 pieces, just like somebody losing their job as a result of the pandemic, or somebody being forced into a different financial situation as a result of the pandemic. So the reality of the situation is not looking at the physics of the situation. It's a little bit short-sighted in how it's processing, in my opinion.
Yeah, that said too, I mean, there's no way for them to judge 2020 income for people, right? So maybe it would have been smarter just to go, all taxpayers get 1,000, bang, here you go, and be done with it, right? Rather than going back to 2019 where, you know, okay, you had a different job in 2020 that doesn't exist anymore, in 2019 that doesn't exist anymore. So suddenly you're making half of what you were making that year, or, you know, so unfortunately, I think it's going to miss a lot of people that are going to need it.
Yeah, and
even the application process, Chuck, like it's, you know, it's an online or telephone-based process, and what's to say somebody in rural BC has seen this and found this information and has great connectivity that can log on to the government's website on Friday and register for it and go through that process. You know, it's a communication story, I think, as much as it is a policy gaffe.
Yeah, absolutely. That's sort of been highlighted throughout all of this, is you know, everything nowadays, especially with COVID, is online, and there's so many areas of the province now that still aren't fully connected or connected at all. So once again, you have people that are left out on the lurch. It can be tough, I guess, and especially when we're running into some of these outbreaks in smaller communities, like we got Fort St. James, and you got, I know connectivity issues up there aren't the best either. So, you know, it's tough, and so we've been talking rolling out broadband for a long time. Is it time to really double our efforts? Or?
Well, yeah, you know, look at TELUS now is bringing their fiber up here, and Shaw is also bringing fiber up into the north area. So now I think is the time to push those companies and ensure that they spread that out as far as they can go to as many communities as possible, you know, and just make sure that people in the province are connected one way or another. I mean, in the past 20 years, the way business and communication has been done has changed drastically, and I don't think our infrastructure has kept up with it. And we need to make sure that that is pushed ahead. It needs to be a priority, and it needs to move forward quickly.
I mean, this has been a huge focus for us for the last, you know, we submitted a policy resolution to the BC government through the BC Chamber in May, you know, indicating how COVID has really exposed the challenges of broadband connectivity in rural and remote BC. And it's not like this is oblivious at any other time, but we start loading networks now. And we had, you know, connection issues here in our own office in downtown Prince George at the height of you know, shutdowns in April, when everybody was online and everybody was on Zoom calls, and it made it such a challenge to get clean connections or clean, consistent connections. But the other side of this too, so I think it was 2012, maybe 2014, the UN declared that that broadband connectivity was a basic human right. And so governments have been talking about this for so long, but not actioning it. They've been putting money behind it, and then, oh, there's an election, so we'll wait another 4 years and we'll put some more money behind it, more research, and more reports, and that's all fine and dandy. But now we've come to a situation that has grossly exposed the lack of connectivity for our rural and remote communities, that we now definitively need to do something about that. The challenge then becomes cost and processes for getting there. And so I've had a number of discussions with my colleagues across central and northern BC. And the other piece that plays into this is there's certainly some communities that are connected better than others. So Smithers, for example, has a better connection than Chetwynd. But then the grand irony is somebody on one side of the road is paying $250 a month for their business connections, and somebody just on the other side of the highway is paying $1,000 because it hasn't stretched to that side of the road. So there's an equity piece that comes with this too. And you know, I'm certainly a free enterprise person. Obviously, my position somewhat dictates that. But there's also a responsibility to provide these services, particularly as the UN declares that. So there's a lot of work to be done in this area. There's a lot of pushing to be done in this area. But this is one of those fights that a lot of people are passionate about, and a lot of people are certainly going to be focused on. And if there is a shift in our economies to move to more home-based professional services workers and less bricks and mortar locations, boy, that's really going to dictate too that our larger city centers in these rural areas are going to require better connectivity as well too, because there's just, as it happens, more people that are going to be on the individual connection.
Yeah, it's not that we're going to go back there, but it's interesting that you know, years ago or decades ago, here in BC and other provinces, the phone company was given a monopoly, and one of the reasons they were given a monopoly was that they provide services to areas that are uneconomical, and we got away from that in the last 20 or 30 years, and some of that is coming home to roost in that these areas are now not serviced. I'm not suggesting that we go back to that model, but you know, we really need to focus on a lot of these areas, particularly now with everything going online. Like, man, oh man, you can't live. You know, everybody talks about it now. Geez, if I lost my phone, that would be it. You know, the house could burn down, but if I lost my phone, gee, that would be a disaster.
Well, there's different mentalities too. I mean, when I was working for government in Alberta, there was some municipalities that were going about adding broadband as part of their tax package. So you would get your garbage and your water and your broadband connections, and that was part of your annual utilities bill or your biannual utilities bill. And it was a brilliant mechanism for them because their communities all of a sudden became much more approachable than they may have otherwise been if you're 20, 30, 50 kilometers outside of a larger city. You know, typically your land cost, housing cost is going to be lower than it would be in, say, Calgary or Edmonton. And now you've got connectivity as part of your tax package. Some people are more inclined to say, I'm going to live in a bedroom community.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. It really does. That may be the smart way to go, is to make sure that is part of your basic utilities, you know, and roll it out the same way that they would utilities. When you build a house in a community, everything is hooked up at the same time, just as your power is hooked up. And that's, I think, the way we need to go to make sure that in the future, everyone has the ability to take part in this world economy and take advantage of what's out there and use the internet to their best advantage again. You know, I mean, some of the places now, you have brilliant people who cannot access what is out there and do what they could do with the internet, and that's kind of sad. You've got people sitting watching the world go by and not able to take part, and we really need to make sure that happens. And I think the best way is make it a utility that's everybody has access to.
Yeah, well, we all probably remember the good old days of dial-up. Geez,
oh yeah.
I would have to.
Are those good days? I don't remember those being good days.
I remember my 300 baud lamp.
They were old.
They were old. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I remember I used to have a little light on my phone line because in Williams Lake, because after we got the paper out, we would upload 2 or 3 stories. That's about all the time we had for. But the ad department, who also had to upload ads to the server, we all used the same line. So I had a little light on my desk, and if the light was on, I better not dial in, because they would be in the middle of uploading some big, huge ad file, and I'd dial in, and they would lose everything that they'd uploaded. So there was lots of arguments over the dial-up line. So things have improved, but if you don't have it, you don't have it, right? Dial-up or nothing, it doesn't help you.
Yeah, we used to have the newsroom. We used to have phone lines crisscrossing the floors to the photo desks and to the news desks and everywhere, trying to make sure that everyone was connected properly. And someone would walk through, trip over a phone line, and that was it. Everything would go silent. And it was like,
I did some consulting work for the Invasive Species Council of BC a number of years ago now, and their lead was in horsefly, and she was on satellite internet. So a lot of those calls never really got finished.
I can imagine.
Yeah, I do remember when we slowly ramped up and everyone got to the 56,000 baud
oh yeah, the new
modems,
yeah.
And that was a big increase, and everyone was just like, wow. But then, we just got past the bulletin board stage of the internet, and the internet was growing exponentially, and content was growing, and it wasn't long before 56K was nothing. You couldn't get anything out of 56K.
Yeah.
And so the broadband became the thing, and that's still where we are. But for how much longer are we going to be at that? It's okay to be on cable level, Is everyone going to need a T1 line pretty soon, or what?
We just changed our cell phones, or both my wife and I, our cell phones came up for renewal, and we were on, I think, 6 gig data plans, unlimited everything else. And they're like, we can move you to 20 gig plans. And it's like, yeah, probably going to use 20 gigs. Makes sense. I mean, particularly now where I said, I'm in the office and I spend so much time on virtual calls and virtual meetings that I end up now working from my phone much more than I typically would, because it's an extra screen.
Yeah.
And that then results in data, because to your point, Chuck, we're pulling fiber, the TELUS fiber line into our office on January 8th, which, will be exciting for us.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And, a lot of things now, we talked about it at our house, is that we don't need a landline anymore, except for the security system. Like why do you have a landline? You do everything on your cell. And, I can do almost as much on my cell as I can on my computer.
Yeah. Actually, our security system is on cell.
Is it? That's good.
Yeah. So, you don't even need that for that here now. It's incredible. It's really all changing very, very quickly. And like I say, you're getting the fiber coming into your office, Todd, and that's going to be phenomenal. But the internet will ramp up to take that bandwidth. If the opportunity's there, it goes, here, oh great, we'll take that, let's do it.
I'm going to lose my excuse of not having my camera on because I've got low bandwidth, but it actually means I'm just wearing a hat and lazy.
But anyways, we should switch topics just a little bit here. Other news in town this week that kind of, it wasn't really new news, but the numbers were new. It come out of City Hall, and the cost overruns at the parkade there next to City Hall, up to 22 million from $12 million originally budgeted. Now, this is of course a continuation of some of the things we've seen over the last few years with cost overruns, but council has made some steps to address that. Todd, do you think what they're doing will help?
I think they've moved in the right direction. I think we've heard specifically from some of the new councillors that council should have a greater level of control over these issues, and I agree with them wholeheartedly. I think there's a number of councillors that will have to speak to this if they're seeking re-election. The numbers are staggering. I mean, as we talk about the budget shortfalls that they're going to experience, and what that means to taxpayers, when we see over $20 million in cost overruns that were approved through alternative approval processes, that's really challenging. That's challenging as a taxpayer, but that's also challenging as somebody who's supposed to advocate on behalf of businesses in our community on how we can do things better, how government can do things better. There were probably millions of dollars that could have been added to incentives for small businesses, for home-based businesses, tax incentives for the community on large to help with some of the recovery efforts moving forward. There's still unparalleled challenges with drug addiction, homelessness, and mental health that those dollars could have been allocated to. So there's a lot of discussions that need to happen around that and around how council will lead going forward, because whether it's deferred to the interim or successful city manager, council is still the elected body that the electors have to look back on and say, how did you control that?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Chuck, do you think they're getting better controls? It really has been astounding, some of the revelations and how city councillors are simply not aware of a lot of these things. And you would think that when you're a bureaucrat, sometimes that's just basic CYA, is you let the uppers know what's going on. I know when I worked in the corporate world, that was always I got more trouble if I blindsided my boss than if I told him what was coming down the pike, right?
But that makes sense to me. You should be putting the information forward to the man who makes the decision, right? And I don't see how they're not letting this information through to the councillors who get to make the decision whether we can do this or not. They were elected to make those decisions. They should be presented with information. I mean, a $10 million cost overrun on a $12 million project is a huge amount.
Yeah.
That's giant. How does that happen? And why didn't anybody know about it until now? It just seems like it's unreasonable. I just don't find that a reasonable amount that could be an overrun. I can see $1 million cost overrun, but a $10 million cost overrun, nearly double the cost of the project, that's humongous. That's giant. And that's something that there needs to be a lot more research and digging into this and finding out how that can happen, why it's happening, and procedures need to be changed to make sure that doesn't continue.
And accountability can't just be a word thrown around the table.
That's exactly it. I mean, yeah. If you're signing off on a project and saying, yeah, that looks fine, I've reviewed this project, I'm the project manager, I've reviewed this project and said, yeah, it is set up to go through, perfect. It's going to be $12 million, great. When it comes in at 22, somebody better be looking at you.
Yeah.
Not saying, oh, wow, that's unfortunate. We'll just have to deal with that.
Project timelines need to be a consideration on these things too. I mean, sometimes something gets announced, you go out to tender, it comes back $12 million. You go through 1 million different approval processes, all of a sudden it's 2 years later, you still approve the same project, but construction costs have gone up by 10, 15, 20%, whatever. And then that's regular inflation and depending on what initiatives are going on around us. But there's also a discussion to be had on there about your approval timelines and processes. Sometimes leadership involves making unpopular decisions with one section of the community or the public, but it's for the gross benefit of the community as a whole. So standing up and saying, we approve this project, let's move on it now, is also a vitally important piece to keeping your dollars in check Because if you're quoting something in $2020, you can't build it in 2025 for the same price.
That's exactly it. That is exactly the thing right there. You've got to go, okay, if we're going to do this, we have to move on it now, do it now with the price that we've got. Let's get it going. Let's make it a priority.
You know that pool's coming in over budget.
Yeah.
Well, that's the big question that hasn't been answered yet, right? Is the $10 million in federal and provincial money is where that's going to go, whether that will go to an increased cost or, whether it's going to actually reduce the amount the city has to borrow. Back in the summer when they announced that, the comment was, well, there's going to be a robust discussion in the fall over this, and there's been very little discussion about it. And like you said, Todd, that's exactly what the city did with that, is they held off on that project, hoping to get that money. Now the question is, what do they do with it?
Yeah.
Well, there's another lingering question that I think begs to be asked, and that's the $6.1 million from the province for the COVID recovery grants. There's the untold, or I guess we know, I can't remember off the top of my head, 25 million or something egregious like that coming from Fortis for the franchise fees that are coming back.
Yeah.
This council will be deciding on a lot of those funds right before an election. I would suggest that those funds should probably, outside of the COVID recovery money from the province that needs to be put into the economy and into the community immediately, the money coming from Fortis should be deferred to the next council so that they can decide what's best for the community for the long-term success and viability of the community going forward.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and a big part of that, like I say, if they're deciding before the election, is the question of who's going to seek re-election and how they'll deal with that money, because it's a different kettle of fish if you're trying to get re-elected again on what to do with that money, or if you're heading out the door, you would have a different view on how to deal with that. So yeah, it's probably
that's exactly it. Why are they gonna? Well, they're not saying they are yet, but it shouldn't be an election issue. It should not be an election football that's used to get reelected. It needs to be, like you said, deferred, put aside. Let's get this election over with, and then we can deal with this thoughtfully and properly. Don't make it a football that can be used to get me back in.
And the sad part with the Fortis money that's coming is that the city has known since it signed that deal that money will likely come at this specific date. They didn't know exactly how much, but they've known for, I can't remember the term, I think it might have been 20 years or 25 years or something. So,
yeah.
They've known for a long time that this will likely be a scenario. So I don't know how much planning has been gone into it over the years. And that's probably election plays into that too, for political reasons. Politicians who will be there when they can cut the check, they're the ones that want to have a say in where it gets spent. Right?
Yeah, it could become a really nasty situation. I mean, that one money could be squandered easily on projects that may not be what we really need. So it just needs to be, there needs to be real consideration on this, and there needs to be transparency. People need to know what's happening and not be surprised when it suddenly shows up here instead of where you expect it, right? We want to be able to see what's going on.
Yeah, exactly. And that brings us to just about an hour. So I think we can probably wrap up. Final words from Todd and Chuck. Whoever wants to go first.
2 days left in the Holiday PG campaign. So get out there, shop local, take a picture, tag it with the hashtag Holiday PG. You can win additional prizes, including a New Year's Eve out with your significant other or your best friend or someone who's in your home. And that's all brought by chamber member businesses. So we're really excited about that. But aside from that, please shop local as much as you can. I know we can't say don't order some things from Amazon or anything from Amazon. Certainly appreciate there's some better opportunities sometimes. But as much as we can engage local, we should be engaging local. And Merry Christmas.
There you go. Chuck?
Well, I'd like to give a shout out to all those over at Jubilee, all the staff and people who are helping to fight this COVID outbreak there. And I want to remind everybody that they need your support, and just let's try and make it work the best we can, help everybody fight through this thing. And when the chance does come to get vaccinated, please do. It's going to help. And Merry Christmas to everybody.
Yeah, and I'd just like to echo that. I know it's going to be a strange Christmas, but you might not be with a lot of your loved ones this Christmas, but think of it as you sacrifice this Christmas so you'll have a bunch of Christmases in the future. And yeah, wear your mask. As Dr. Bonnie Henry says, be kind, be calm. There's one other, but I can't remember what it is.
I think it was Be Merry.
Be merry, yes. Merry
Good.
Christmas, everyone, and thanks, Chuck and Todd, for giving us your viewpoints again, and thanks for everybody who's tuned in and watched.
Thanks to you, Bill, for always hosting these. I know it's a challenge to get it online for you.
It is at times. Yeah, today was a little bit of a challenge at the start, and like I said, I was on a different Zoom call last night, which probably should be on one of the comedy shows because it was a disaster.